go live button and actually go live? Should we do it? I suppose we could. Hello there, good people. Hi, it's Jason with Green Country from. Hi. Hello there, good people. Let me get started over. It's Jason with Green Country Agroforestry. Wednesday evening again, 8:30. I'm a little bit late popping up, actually. I was taking care of some business in the water closet, and it took me a moment longer. This happens whenever you get older, as you might discover. Hi, everybody. Hi. I got some people that stopped in earlier to say hello. Hopefully, you guys are still around. Got Brian planning on going and getting drunk tonight. Maybe still awake. Sassbrass heading to bed early. Got some projects in the works. I'll talk about that a moment too, because Mary and I were talking about this earlier. John's heading into the dry part of the season, but doing pretty good for water. Carolyn's with us tonight. All right, here we go. So let me see what we got going on here. I brought a little something. I'm going to turn off the screen for a moment and show this thing off because it is an interesting object. Just turn the background off for a moment. Have a look. Have a gander at this. Have a gander. Have a look. Is this a forced perspective and a piece of artwork, or is it in fact an alien creature that I've discovered in my yard, or is it something else entirely? So this is a top set. This is what is coming off of our Egyptian walking onions right now. As you can see, I'll get this close to the camera. You can see all of those little tiny bulbils there. Each one is trying to produce a brand new onion plant, and they're just going off in all directions. Now I can take this and I can plant this, cover it up with soil, and each one of those is going to produce a brand new onion plant. Sometime, probably by spring, I can divide those up, get a whole bunch more onion plants. But have a look at this one. See, one of these bulbils, this is the bottom, incidentally. There's more plant underneath here. So this is not this is the bottom one. One of them sent up another shoot, and here at the end of it, there is yet another set of bulbils. Each one is going to try to produce another onion plant. So we have these two sets that we just picked up. And this is one of the chores I'm going to have to take care of this week, is taking these and getting them separated, divided, planted out. And there are some people that sell walking onions. I'm going to turn our screen back on. There are some people that sell walking onions, and they will, let's put the safflowers up. Safflowers are pretty. They'll sell these bulbils, and they'll let them dry out before they sell them, right? And whenever they dry out, there's a possibility, if it was trying to spend its energy to germinate when it was being produced, as you can tell, it has this long stem where it was continuing to try to make a plant this time of year. It's trying to make another plant. And you can tell from that why they call them allium proliferum. They are trying to be prolific, very much so. But since these plants are trying to germinate and grow new plants right now, if I take them and I let them dry, there's a good possibility that some of these bulbils will have expended all of their vital force trying to get started. And because they were trying to get started, I just realized something. I probably should have left the back door open for the kids to get in. Guys, if you have to, you can sneak in behind the green screen. It'll be fine. If they expended all their vital force whenever they were dry, they're not going to produce new plants. So if I sent you these dried bulbils in the hopes that you're going to get new plants, some of them will produce new plants and some of them won't. But if I send you a live plant, then you're going to get a live plant. So I would much rather take the bulbils when they're going to grow, put them in some medium, let them grow, then divide them, send you live plants. That way, all of the plants you get are live instead of cross your fingers and hope that most of your bulbils make it. If that makes any sense. Let's see. Speaking of, before we get to tonight's topic, speaking of nursery business, I have nursery business to share with you. Tonight is the very last night going into summer. Oh, back door is open? Okay. Sorry. I was just remembering as I was going live that there were some things I may have forgot to do before we got started. Like opening up the back door so you guys can get in. All right, so tonight is the very last night that we will have Hemerocallis fulva daylilies either in the 4-pack or in the 25 bulk discount pack available for sale until they are done with blooming. So we've had this week we've had the Stella d'Oro that we aren't selling, the smaller, shorter, yellow flowered, and the Misaka, also the one of those really fun ones that I showed you a while back that we were trying out. Makes really pink blooms, pretty flowers. So we're gonna hopefully spread those around a bit. Anyway, so the smaller, the Stella d'Oro sports, they're blooming right now. But now we're starting to get the flower stalks on the classic orange Hemerocallis fulva. So I'm not going to sell them while they're trying to reproduce by making flowers, if that makes any sense. They're spending their energy on flowers. I don't want them to try to expend their energy making new roots and everything else getting reestablished. So once they're done with flowering, we'll go back to selling them again. So tonight is the last night that you can order any until we are done with flowering, which will probably be another month or two. It's like September or so. We can go back to selling them, and then we're going to go dormant for a while. So we'll have a couple of months in the fall season that we can get them and sell them, and then we'll be dormant again until spring comes around. Anyway, so that was what I wanted to tell you regarding the nursery business. Oh no, there was one other thing. I just saw it written over here at the margins. One other thing. If you go to our website, www.greencountryagroforestry.com, that is https:// secure website. If you go to our website and have a look at the upper right-hand corner of the list of stuff in the website bar, right next to resources, there is now a tab that reads gift cards. And yes, it's true. You can now buy gift cards from us. So you can send a gift card to a loved one or a person that you want to give a tree to, but you don't know what kind of tree they're going to want, and you don't know when they're going to be ready for it. You go, hey, you're going to need some pecan trees, and you're probably going to want some fruit trees and some other, maybe some perennials and stuff like that. Whenever you're setting up your household, here's a housewarming gift. You can give them a gift card for Green Country Agroforestry, and they can pick out what they want and order it whenever they're ready to get it. So that's just available. Nursery business. Okay, we're done with nursery business. Let's move on to talk about the topic at hand. All right. So you've come to the realization that living in the city is probably a bad idea. You would like to get out of the city, but you're a middle-class family. You've got bills to pay. You've got the mortgage on the house. You got the car payment. The job only pays so much. The kids have, braces and, the usual stuff that kids have. It's going to be challenging for you to be able to scrape enough cash to be able to get a property in addition to what you've already got. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of different discipline, a lot of effort, and a lot of people don't make this transition. Even though you would like to, it looks like it's a bridge too far. And this is for most middle-class families. And a lot of people don't have even their own home right now that might fall into that middle-class category. You guys are still renting. You're in the middle of the city. You're renting. You're like, wow, getting property is so expensive. And all of these properties are tiny little postage stamp things with HOAs and neighbors that are just insane lunatics. And why would you want to spend that money to live there any long periods of time? You already have got the idea in your head. You want to escape the city, but how? I mean, you don't even have property now that you've got equity in. How are you going to be able to get off into some place where you can be a little bit more self-sufficient? One of the first things I want to talk to you about, and I already talked to you about this before, is the concept of how much land you actually need in order to make a go at homesteading. That's one thing. You don't need as much land as you think you did. But another thing is, if you're having certain ideas and presuppositions about what you would like to have on your homestead, you can discover that you're setting yourself up for a lot more work than is going to be feasible for one small family to take care of, especially if one or two members of the family, the adults in the family, are having to still make sure that you're getting out there and getting an income in. Because let's face it, you're trying to make this transition from city to country. Somebody's still working, somebody's still got the job, somebody's still paying the bills. Usually you're not making this cold jump straight to boom, cabin off the grid, and we're roughing it. I mean, like the pioneers. Not a whole lot of people are going to try doing that ever. Really, it's not a realistic expectation. And I've seen couples that do it, and a lot of them break up over this sort of thing. Right? It's just not the direction that they want to go. Not everybody wants to go there. Okay. no, you still have this desire, this drive to be able to be involved in a piece of property outside, out of the city, where you can have some peace of mind, knowing that you can actually produce enough food to feed yourself and everything that you need. Okay, let's try to marry the fantasy and the reality together. For people that have sufficient money to spend on a spread and be able to get the equipment and everything else that they need, they can make this sort of a hobby farm thing happen, where you have a little bit of everything. But let me just take a look at cows real quick, right? I mentioned previously that there's a stocking density for cattle, and the average is about 4 acres. If you want to be able to provide all the feed for the cow, it's going to forage for most of it. But you're going to cut hay and you're going to store back hay. You might want to grow a little bit of grain or some other feed for it, maybe some sorghum or something like that, right? Some sweet feed. Silage that up and feed it to the cattle. On the average, it's about 4 acres per cow to make sure that you get all of it. And yes, Faith, you missed some walking onions. Would you like for me to turn off the green screen and show it to you again? I'll make some video. I'll make some video here. I'll make some video here in next week or so. Let me turn off my background here. There you go. Look at that. I have 2 sets of mobiles forming on this particular one. So there's the small one. I'm sorry, I tried to hold steady. And then lower down on the plant. So it grew like this. Lower down on the plant are the big ones. And of course you can see they're trying to form brand new plants right now. And if I were to try to take these and dry them, there's a good chance that some of these might not survive. But if I take them and I plant them now, they will all survive, or at least most of them will. Anyway, so there we go. Let's go to the tropics. Tropics looks nice. Isn't that a nice picture behind me? That's pretty. you want. We will have them available for sale come spring. I will start shipping them out come spring. I don't have quite as many as I'd hoped because one of our beds just, the soil in it was just terrible. It was mostly substrate. I was hoping I could get by with fertilizing it and shine on. No, I couldn't. Duck water has its limitations. I'm going to have to further amend that bed before it's ever going to be useful for anything. So we've dropped from about 300 available in the spring to about 200 available. It's still plenty. I'll have enough that I can fill a few orders. All right. But we're going to talk about cows, by golly. So we're looking at 4 acres to support your cow, per cow, right? Per cow, it's 4 acres. You might be able, with lush grass, to get away with like 3.5 acres. You'd have to have really good grass. And if you're grass poor, you might want to look at 5 or 6 acres per cow, to be realistic. So you're not going to be able to have a lot of cows, realistically speaking. But if you want to have milk all the time, let's say you want to have milk year round, you would like to be able to go and get milk all year round. You can do this by timing the breeding and the freshening of your cattle. Cows are going to be able to produce on the average around 300 days out of the year or so, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. So by staggering their introduction to the bull and spreading that out over a few weeks, you can get to the point where you're hitting an average, small dairy operation, an average of 8 gallons of fresh milk per day, and you're putting back about 32 pounds of cheese per day on the average. You're going to do that with about 16 cattle. You're going to have 10 active heifers that are milking age that you're going to be rotating through every 3 years or so, because keeping them at peak production. They only stay in peak production for 3 years. So that's a 4-year-old cow. 4 years, she becomes burger. And one of the calves that you've been raising up takes over that spot. Well, you have a little bit of a buffer period. You only need to butcher off about 3 of them per year to keep up with that. So you'll have 3 that are going to come up to be replacing them. So you have your 10 plus the 3, that's 13. You're probably going to want plus or 1 or 2 bulls. I would err on the side of caution and have 2 bulls at any given time. The old one and the young one, and maybe every 5 years or so rotate those guys out. That gets you at 15 Probably you're going to have at least one more calf that you're holding on to just in case, because you never know, accidents happen and you don't want to have a collapse of your herd. So all total about 16 cattle. 16 cattle with those kind of numbers, and you're rotating the freshening of your cows will get you in milk all the time. But did you notice how much that was? Oh my goodness, that's too much, right? That's 8 gallons, 8 gallons a day, and you could fudge numbers down a little bit and say 6 gallons a day and 24 pounds of cheese, plus or minus a bit, considering how much milk fat you're going to have for butter. Your butter numbers are taken out of your milk and cheese numbers here. You're going to have whatever is butter taken out of that. End of the day is it's a whole lot of dairy in order to have the luxury of having milk available every day. You might be able to get away with fewer cattle. You might be able to. But to be able to actually have a consistent supply of milk every day and be able to say this is a consistent supply, you're not going to be able to get away with much smaller than a 16 cow herd. Now, if you're running the numbers, 16 cows on 4 acres per cow in order to supply their feed needs is about 64 acres. And that's just so you can have milk every day. Obviously, it's more milk than your family is going to need every day, which means it's going to be shared with someone out there in the community, in the broader community. If you have a small dairy herd, it's probably not going to be large commercial scale. It might be more along the lines of, okay, I have the immediate neighbors around here that don't raise cattle, but they do other things. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my milk and I'm going to take my butter and I'm going to take my cheese and I'm going to swap it with my neighbors in this vicinity for the eggs that these guys produce and for the bacon that these guys produce, and maybe for the benefit of this guy's help come butcher time, because he can really help me get these cattle butchered, cleared out, chilled out, and processed quickly. And I could not manage with the size of these animals without the assistance. So this is looking at ways that you can interact with the community. Problem is, okay, I want to have milk. So in order for me to have milk, a couple things have to happen. Whenever I make my exodus from the city, I have to either get fortunate enough to find a rural community where somebody has at least a small dairy that is willing to do the swapping in that neighborhood, which is, that's iffy. Or I have to be willing to be the one that sets up the dairy. That's expensive. Or I have to be looking at, I only have one milk cow and I have to get her time with the bull to refreshen her, and we may have 300 gallons a year, and that's a lot of milk. I mean, that's more milk than the family actually needs in reality. But getting that cow freshened, taking her to the bull is expensive because the bull's time is precious. Getting material from the bull in the form of the syringe that you can then take out of the refrigerator, warm up to appropriate temperature, get the cow on the boot and administer yourself, if you understand what I'm saying. That's actually rather expensive too. To make it cost effective, you really do need to have a bull. And once again, now you're at this situation where you need a herd, and that is more than one family needs. So things like having a dairy are things that need to be worked into a community. Well, as it turns out, what we were talking about before, the average person does not need that large amount of acreage, but things like having the dairy that everybody wants to have some of and can support a large group of people, several families, that's something that might be set up as a community project, or a project that one particular family or a couple of families take equal size at providing the necessary labor for. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is, oh my goodness, sorry it took so long to get around to it. We're going to be talking about what was the title of this program? Exiting the cities with land partnership agreements. And what a land partnership agreement is a contract that you establish with one or more people. So this could be each family establishes themselves as a member of this partnership. It's a legal document. You get them drawn up. I'm not going to give you a list of lawyers, because you can search land patent agreement lawyer near me and find somebody. And I'd have to give a review of every lawyer out there. I'm telling you, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to do it. But I'm pretty sure you guys are intelligent enough that you can copy and paste land partnership agreement into your browser and type in lawyers near me, click, right? Uh, and you will get a return. Now all you need to do is find other people that are living in the city. And also, incidentally, it's a good idea to make a relationship with people who are living in the country too, that you might consider entering into a partnership with sometime in the future, or at least want to have as neighbors in the future. Because it turns out the people who are already living in the country are going to be the first people that happen to know that, oh yeah, there's a parcel of land coming up for sale in the old Henderson place down the road. It's 40 acres, not more than I want to take care of or anything like that. But if you guys are planning up setting up one of these land partnership agreements, you might go in with a couple of families there. 40 acres would be getting you a long way towards having a dairy. You might have to scrimp and save a little bit and buy in some of your feed, your hay. But if you're making up the difference with fresh beef, you can get enough money to buy hay with a little bit of fresh beef that you get on your excess. Something like that. Maybe the Henderson place is 120 acres. Well, that's a lot more doable if you want to have your dairy operation. I'm not saying you ought to have a beef cattle dairy operation in every homestead group, because beef cattle do take an awful lot of space. I'm a lot more comfortable with dairy goats, or even sheep for that matter. There's dairy sheep you can get. They don't take near the land usage. But in any case, here's the deal. Say you go in with maybe 8 different families, middle class families, can't afford the 70 or 80,000 bucks they're going to need to set up a spread where they can have the kind of stuff that they're going to need to be able to say, yeah, we can be self-sustaining. But going in with, say, 8 other families, and we're saying, how much are they paying for land here? I've got notes. I took down some numbers for Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri. Did I include Kansas? Yeah, Kansas. Kansas is in here. All right, so I'm looking at my notes over here. Just a quick reference. Arkansas, about 3,550. If Vicky's tuned in and lurking, she could probably chime in and tell us a plus or minus what she's getting in the Ozarks. Texas, around 4,000. Missouri, anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000. Missouri land is expensive these days. Oh my goodness, expensive. Kansas, getting close to around 3,000. Oklahoma, 2019, you could probably get away with 2,000 an acre nowadays. You're looking at 2,500 up to 3,000, depending upon where you are. And of course, land in Oklahoma has some varied value. We'll put it that way. You can be in desert in some places. Some places you are. It's desert land. So just because it says Oklahoma doesn't mean it's good. Mary's parts now. Awesome. So of all of those, like I said, Texas 4,000, Missouri anywhere from 4,000 for farmland up to 6,000. I don't know where you're paying 6,000 per acre per land. Maybe that's closer to the cities or municipal areas. I know around Tulsa, land prices are just insane for hilly property that really I would love to take and develop into something awesome and useful. And I would regard having the rocks as a resource and not a detriment, but they're wanting to sell it for real estate, for yuppies to build their houses on it. It's never going to happen, but they have it priced too high. And as a result, all around Tulsa, there's this just huge band of greenery that's never going to get sold for anybody to develop at all. Unless you're willing to pay a little bit extra for it, for the convenience of being able to have a quick ride into town. All right. What was Carolyn saying here? She's saying a small herd of cows is better. You got 1 bull and 3 heifers rotating. Yeah. One heifer to be in milk at one time. Figure to have 40 acres. You could probably do it. The reason why I was suggesting you have the extra animals and extra rotation is because you do need some time for the cattle to recover in between freshening and introduction to the bulls. Adding in that extra recovery time would require either going without milk for a while or having additional animals. And having the additional animals, if you're already planning on providing for a neighborhood, would make more sense. Because already at 3 heifers, rotating them the amount of milk they're going to produce way overwhelms what a family can handle, and it's not really enough to be commercially viable either. So it's you have too much, you got more than you can use, but you have not enough to go and market and sell, and that's a problem. I mean, this is one of the big problems with raising dairy cattle in the first place. You have to have enough to make it worth your time, and then it's a question of having, is it too much? What do you do about everything else? And you're back into the monetary economy. It's horrible. Oh, Faith is saying in southern Illinois, you won't get less than 6,000 an acre unless you're buying like 50 acres. Then it's closer to you have to buy a larger parcel. And once again, this prices the average middle class family out of it. You look at the cost of that. Go, the house I've already got that I'm living in cost me like $200,000, and it's got a postage stamp lawn and an HOA, and people just crawling up my backside all the time to pay out for this, that, and the other thing. We're getting harassed constantly, and crimes in the streets, and the criminals are in the elected offices, and there's not anything you can do about it here. I want to get out of here because this is looking too much like a cattle feedlot, and the people who are in charge are looking at us too much like cattle, and we're going to move on out to the country where we can have at least a little bit of security. But how do you do it? Because you're already, leveraged to your eyeballs up in debt, and getting an additional place outside of town. Say you're having to buy minimum of 50 acres at $4,000 an acre. That's $200,000. That's how much you're paying for your house already. It's like paying for your house all over again. That's hard for people to do if you're trying to do it alone. Unfortunately, there is this thing called a land partnership agreement that you can exercise with other like-minded people to share the burden financially, and also to share the work. And what you're essentially doing is establishing an incorporated farm with several partners. And you can work any sort of agreements that you want to in this arrangement. Remember, you don't need that much acreage for your own domicile to be on this farm that you're establishing, that you're a partner in. So part of your partnership agreement can be, for your partnership agreement, what you get out of it is actual title and ownership to a subdivision of this original parcel once it is paid for, once it has reached the point where the property is completely paid for. So once the entire property is paid for, regardless of what happens from here on out, this section of the acreage that your partnership agreement is getting is going to be yours, period. End of story. You will have free and clear title to this. And then it butts up against this area that you have the farm business at, of which you own a portion as a partner in this land partnership agreement. And how that exactly works, and who provides how much labor, who provides how much of the initial financing to get this determined, that's all up to you guys whenever you sit down and you go, so how do we want to set this up? What would we like to establish? Do we want to have a dairy concern? And then if we're going to have a dairy concern, how many people are going to be involved in this partnership, right? This could be actually a fairly large operation involving hundreds of acres if you want it to be. Would you like to be the part owner of a fairly large either dairy and or beef cattle herd, or something else that's equally lucrative? How do you get into that? Well, you don't get into that as a solo investor if you're in the middle class. You just don't. That's lucrative. It's too expensive. So finding other people that would like to go into this partnership with you, that don't even necessarily have to be in the same city you are. This is a wonderful thing about the internet. You can get in touch with people all over the place and talk. And one of the places that you would like to maybe do that is at the survivaltribenetwork.com, survivaltribenetwork.com, hosted by our friends Green Greg's, and I think it was Wiseowl is the one who's actually operating survivaltribenetwork.com. Rebecca does a good job with that thing. Sends us out regular notifications and bulletins and other fun stuff. But it is a good way to meet and encounter other people that would like to escape from the city and possibly give you an opportunity to set something like this out. So anyway, how fun? How fun is that? Go price fencing today, Heterodox is saying. Oh my goodness. Hey, guess what? It's 9 o'clock. You know what that alarm means? It means I need to go put my ducks up. That's what that alarm means. I forgot and left this thing over here. So you guys got exposed to the horrible sound of my notification alert telling me to go and put my ducks away. Yeah, so fencing. Your outbuildings, milk barn, hay barn, tractor, implements, cattle, fence costs, all of that stuff. It's expensive. Setting up a farm is expensive. And if you're setting up a farm, even a small farm for yourself and for your family, that your idea is, I'm going to get 10 acres. We're only going to have 1-2 cows because that's all the space we have. But we're going to get a tractor and we're going to do this. It's a lot of expense. And of course, the tractor breaks down and you have to find some way to repair the darn thing. And if you were already off grid by yourself, you just have an expensive paperweight. Wish you had some horses or something. So one of the best things you can do is to have a farming community together that you could rely upon. And you come out here to the country, and I'm not in the country proper. I'm in this very nice situation where I am on the very, very outer edges of a very laid back municipal area where I can get away with having ducks in my backyard. My neighbor over there can get away with having sheep in his backyard. And between all of us doing these little minor agricultural products and being neighbors and swapping stuff, it's thoroughly possible that I can get my milk right there from the sheep farmer. He's going to have to expand a little bit more. He's only got 1 or 2 back there right now. He's going to have to start grazing them in the green belt over here. We've got a row of trees and a pasture area that he could be grazing those sheep on. And I fully support the idea of him grazing his sheep on that area instead of having somebody come by and mow it. It'd make a lot more sense, and he could raise more sheep. And if he raised more sheep, then here you go. I'll swap eggs for milk any day. And shoot, if that means that there's lamb chops every now and then, and sometimes wool for blankets and coats, by golly, that's a neighbor I want to make sure is nice and happy. So Carolyn's, I have somebody named Go-Go here that I don't recognize. If you have 2 bulls, break your females into 2 groups, 1 for each knoll or each bull, then you can make your own replacement heifers without inbreeding. This is another reason to have more than 1 bull. You're going to have to keep your genetics diversified, and if you very good point there. If you're not keeping more than 1 bull, then you're only breeding 1 line of genetics, period, and you will eventually run into problems. And of course, once again, whenever you're trying to manage with a small number of livestock to begin with, oh my goodness, that's a small number of livestock that you've got here. It's not a large gene pool, and you're going to be constantly looking for ways to improve that. I seem to recall when we had our dairy goat herd, we were getting calls from people, and it's kind of sad. We were not good at marketing the milk. Of course, goat milk is great, wonderful stuff. It's delicious, it's nutritious, good for you. If you have problems with regular milk and allergies and stuff like that, try goat milk. It may be something that you can handle instead. But this was the 1980s that we were running the goat dairy farm, or the dairy goat farm. 144 heads, it's a lot of goats. A lot of them in milk at any given time. It's a lot of milk, and it was more milk than we could drink. It was more milk that we could sell, and eventually we had goats that we just let go. Didn't bother milking them at all. We milked a few, and just to keep up with the few orders that we had and how much we were going to consume. But we never milked the herd to the capacity that it could have been milked, or even monetized it to the way that it could have been monetized. It was a big money saving. In any case, what was I saying? This quest to get to this point where you have the self-sufficiency, right? It's a lot of expense. The tractors are expensive. The mini compact tractor right now, we're looking at a little tiny one at the Atwoods. It was $18,800 for this little tiny. It had a bucket on the front. It had the hitch on the back that you can hitch all of your implements to. That front end, having the front end attachment, would allow you to swap out other attachments. That means you could put a little small forestry mulcher on the front end of this thing. I mean, you could do a lot of work with it. And it had a fairly small wheelbase, so if you wanted to work it into a forest garden, especially a fairly large agroforestry setup, a little bit larger, where you're having to go and gather nuts from multiple trees and stuff like that. You can tow your produce cart and everything else with it. Nice little mini compact tractor, but it's $20,000. That's not a cheap. Pardon me. That's not a cheap piece of equipment, and that's not including the cost of all the implements that you want to go along with it. So yeah, goes right. It adds up. It adds up really fast, and it's hard for a middle class family to be able to get that all together. All right. So let me see here. I was thinking about how much milk, how much dairy products I like to consume myself, if it's just me. I think me on the average is maybe 2 to 4 pints a day, 3 pints a day, maybe 3 pints a day sounds good. 3 pints a day. 8 gallons is what is that? That's multiplied by pints, right? There's 16 pints in a gallon. So that's 48 and 80. That's 128 pints per day. That means that a small dairy herd, like I was describing, would be enough to supply like 40 people like me with the kind of milk dairy product consumption that we're accustomed to. 40 people, if we're talking like 5-member households, that's 8 families. So it is realistic to say that a small dairy goat herd consisting of 10 active heifers at any given time could supply the dairy needs and some of the meat needs too of 8 separate families, taking up a total of 64 acres plus whatever acreage else that the families would need. When it comes down to individual gardens, a family of 5, a 1 acre garden, another acre for just general knockaround purposes, and where your house is 2 acres each. That's 16 acres, another 64 to 70 to cover your dairy goat herd. Probably going to make that savanna pasturage. So this will also have a lot of your productive trees in it as well. Your ponds should have fish stocked in them. There's a bunch of food opportunities here that are all getting together. So we were at 70 plus 16, 80. We were still looking at, say, 100 acres. 100-acre segment, 8 families, split up the cost at, say, you're going to get a discount, say $4,000 an acre. That's $400,000 divided by 8 families, or $50,000 per family. This is getting a little bit closer to a middle class to what a middle class family might be able to pull off. That's making a big choice here, though, right? Because $20,000 to $30,000, that's getting close to eating up all of your nest egg, right? It's a large amount of money. Do you want to invest it in something like this? If you're investing it in an opportunity to make more money, like an actual functioning production farm where you're going to be able to have a product that you can export and make money off of, that would contribute to the overall well-being of everyone who's associated with this partnership, then it makes sense to get a piece of property that large. Out of our for Mary and I, that's out of our price range. We don't have that kind of money. We might be able to scrape together, say, 20 or 30,000 if we were hard pressed to do it. All right, that's more in the we're going to raise sheep and ducks area of cooperative farming ventures. But I'm not talking about a cooperative. We're talking about a legal business partnership involving a farm. It would be an incorporated farm, just involving several different families getting together, pooling their resources financially and their labor resources to be able to make this work. And it is one of those things that allows people who otherwise would not have the means to be able to do something like get out of the city and get property somewhere, that opportunity, that chance to do it. Here's another thought and another thing. I know Greg has talked about this. Greg Ellis has talked about sharecropping. In other words, you be the landlord, you own the property, you lease the space to the people that want to use it. That's a little bit less secure and less enticing to the people that are trying to come out of the city, because I'm coming out of the city and I'm coming to what? To be a sharecropper, to be a person that has no ownership of land, no ownership of the property. I'm going to be a serf, a peasant living here under Lord so and so. I don't want that. Nobody wants that. Not to mention if it's a for-profit arrangement and we're trying to move out of the city job goes with that. Where are we going to get the income to be able to continue to pay the lease? Either that, or we're going to have to keep traveling back and forth from the country to the city. That's expensive, or we're electronically commuting. Electronically commuting out of the country to the city can also be problematic at times because, let's face it, the communications and electricity infrastructure in the country does not always function at the same rate that the communications and electronic infrastructure does in the city. Just saying, it's fortunate that we're as close to town as we are. Otherwise, who knows? Power could go off, and it might be more than a month before they get around to turning it back on. That's just because we're like the last customer. We're the last customer that the electric company gets to. They go, oh, yeah, there's these guys. They're all the way out here at the end of the line. You realize they got one transformer and they're behind it, and they're the only one behind it. So we're not high priority because there's not that many people picking up the phone and calling, going, hey. It's just one person going, hey, my power is out. We do have some neighbors who are leasing next door to us, so hopefully they'll complain too now. So there's going to be 3 or 4 people going, hey, the power's out. Hopefully we won't have a repeat of 2007. That was pretty intense. You wouldn't think, being only about 4 or 5 miles away from downtown of a metropolitan area, that it would take a month to get power back on. But in 2007, that's exactly the case. It took a month for us to get power back on. That was one heck of an ice storm. Okay. I was going to say something about the stuff that's popping up in the news. You guys want to hear me gripe about the news for a minute? All the news? I'm going to do a little news griping. So Greg has already covered the situation involving the Dnieper River, the dam across the Dnieper River, and potential problems with the nuclear power plant over there. Yeah, completely and totally 100% a predictable problem with the way nuclear power plants are put together these days. We could call Fukushima an accident because it was an earthquake. That's kind of acts of nature, acts of God sort of thing going on. Was it 3 Mile Island on 3 Mile Island plant? Minor release of a little bit of radioactive material. Yeah, a little oopsie. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Most of the radiation actually is a little bit higher in your granite countertop that you paid too much money for to have installed in your house. It's radioactive too. Comparatively, it's close. So a lot of fuss, not really as big a problem as it was made out to be. Chernobyl, horrible accident, horrible. We actually had a meltdown. But there is a thing that goes on with all of these designs, all of these nuclear power plants, the way they're designed, that I cannot call it an accident whenever it happens because it's too predictable. And that is the Zirc alloy rods that are being used in the heart of the nuclear reactor. After they moved away from, I guess, cadmium dampers, and they're now using the zircon alloy in there. These things have to be kept covered with water at all times because the heat that they put out is too high that whenever they're exposed to air, they will catch on fire and they will burn. Some people say, oh, that's a possibility, but it's not guaranteed to happen, except that in every time that it's been tested, it happens. So, yeah, they will catch on fire and they will burn. Come on. Let's not kid ourselves here. Whenever every test that you conduct shows that this is what happens, it's no longer just a possibility that it might happen. It's going to happen. Problem is keeping the water going to these rods where the spent fuel is. It takes 5 to 7 years. I was underestimating saying 5 years previously. Apparently it's up to 7, where they have to be kept in these pools with the water going on them constantly. And it's in the vicinity of about 1,200 gallons per minute per reactor to keep the fuel that reactor produces or spins cooled down enough so that it can be moved into dry storage eventually and then shipped off somewhere else to be forgotten about until some little kid is out there on the hillside going, Hey, mommy, look at me! I can climb this funny looking tree. And then the next day, he gets the little rash on him, and his hair falls out, and people go, "Ooh, mountain curse! Stay away from there." Right? Anyway, I got to harp on that too much. But that's 5 years after you shut down a nuclear reactor, or up to 7 years, really, in some cases, that you have to keep that water going in at around 1,200 gallons per minute for each reactor that you're using. This one that was downstream, or no, sorry, upstream from the dam. It's important. It's upstream from that, not downstream. If it was downstream, it wouldn't be, well, flooding would be the problem. Upstream, it's a bigger problem because now the water is draining away. And the water is necessary to keep those pools filled. And of course, Ukraine being corrupt the way it is, they have these pools for 6 reactors, not just one, 6, stacked with fresh fuel waiting to go into the reactors, not just spent fuel waiting to go out away from the plant to someplace to be put away and forgotten about. So we are on the verge of seeing the worst radiological accident that humanity has ever witnessed. At least in the modern era, there might be something in the Rig Vedas regarding a previous incident that may or may not have been radiological. But the biggest radiological accident that we've ever seen, and at this point, I can't say it's an accident. I can say that it was an inevitability because there are just too gosh darn many points of failure in that system that delivers that water to cooling pools. Too many points of failure that are well beyond the control of anybody that's going to build and maintain a nuclear power plant. So they are not safe, and they cannot be rendered safe with this particular design. And it's going to be a damn shame, but here in a couple of maybe days, maybe a week or so, depending, unless they can get a damper on this situation, you're going to be able to witness, if anybody out there is reporting the news accurately, the worst radiological accident that we've ever seen. And once again, not an accident. Not an accident because it was inevitable. It was going to happen. And it just had to happen someplace where there's that much material in one spot. It's not going to be pretty if they can't get a handle on it. Okay, so that was one news item. Okay, I'm done with that particular rant. If you want more information about that unfolding situation, tune in to Green Greg's. Greg has been on top of this particular situation from day one. He's been covering it since before anybody in the rest of the news media really noticed that there was a problem. But this is some of the things that he's been working on for quite a while now. And there's Vicky. Vicky, we were talking about the price of land in Arkansas earlier, and I was just pulling a number off the web for a quick reference, and I was getting 3,500 or so on the average per acre. I don't know exactly what part of the state that was in, but I think earlier you were saying something was around 3,000, but going up. And so yeah, these places that are good to be, and Arkansas is a good place to be. The Ozarks in general, good place to be. Missouri is a good place to be. In the Ozarks, particularly, I wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't want to be in Jefferson City or in St. Louis, but just outside of Springfield wouldn't be too shabby. Ken was saying post that link. Which link did you want me to post? I could post a lot of links here actually. If you want to find out more about, here we go. Let me just drop a few. Here. And I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it in live chat. So if you want to find more about land partnership agreements, there is a link for land partnership agreements. Let me see here. I'm going to get. I'm suspecting you were talking about the one where Greg was covering those issues. Let me go to my history. I have it in my history, not too far back here. Let's see where you at, Greg. Let's see. We have not this one. That's an update. He's got a follow up update with the update or what happened with the dam. I'm going to find the first one. I could probably give you a link to redacted, although they Redactus is on my come on, buddy. You're not falling for that right now list at the moment. Let me see here. Here is the video for Green Greg's reporting on the situation with the dam on the Dnieper River. There's a roach trying to crawl across my camera. Nuclear disaster imminent would be what I would. That's exactly how I put this. Is nuclear disaster is imminent, and Greg can explain to you all about it in this particular link. He did a follow up, and hopefully we'll have more information as this problem unfolds. But yeah, I can almost guarantee you that the dead media, the what we used to call mainstream media, they're not going to be covering this with anywhere close to honesty, because they're going to have to admit certain things and certain realities, which is nuclear power plants just aren't safe. Period. There's no way to make them safe. Not with this design. Not with this method of handling the waste material that comes out of it. So anyway, let's see. Wow, $700 an acre. It's been a while since it's that cheap. And okay, so Vicky's saying that of course is for undeveloped land. I like the concept of undeveloped land personally. And Mary is saying, like, wouldn't you rather have the place that has the house? Well, if you buy the place that has the house, you bought all the problems that came with that construction. And if it's not really up to the specs that you would like to have it up to suit what you want to do with it, to suit the purposes that you have in mind, then you have to pay to do modifications, and you're never going to be exactly as good as just starting from scratch and building what you wanted to begin with. And I can say a lot of people that have gone out there and found, here's land, it had a house on it, we're going to start our homestead. For example, I was looking at, I think it was Joyce Morris Patch of Avon Homestead, right? They got a place, 10 acres, Missouri, paid too much for it. They did. They paid too much. I think they paid closer to $5,000 per acre there. This is not my tell saying I'm lying. It's my eyes, which honestly swear. I don't remember how much Joyce paid. Okay, but it was a sizable amount, and they were plagued with problems with this building from the very beginning. When they first got it, everything seemed okay. They went through the escrow. They made the closing costs, got the property, and somewhere in between the time that the sale was made and they moved on to the property, presumably the previous owner went into the house, cut and pulled out all of the electric wiring. So they wound up getting a house that had to have a complete wiring job done on it. That means tearing out the interior walls, running wire, running conduit, the full electrician job, which is practically the cost of a house nowadays to have done aftermarket. It's expensive to have this work done. The wire is expensive. The labor is expensive. It's all expensive. And so they got stuck with that. And of course, what are you going to do? You've already signed off on the contract, received the property. Hopefully there's something you can do. But of course, this is the backwoods, and the sheriff is somebody's cousin, if you know what I mean. So I would just rather have unimproved property to begin with. And that way I don't have Vicky's saying most of the construction I've seen around here would be charitably called construction. Oh yeah, I mean, it's just, you're gonna inherit whatever problems that property had. You're gonna have to deal with the cleanup. You're gonna have to deal with the disposal. You're gonna have to deal with everything else. And if you're paying to have the work done, it's gonna be more expensive than you want. Oh. So Sassafras is saying, out at the headwaters of the Buffalo, we were looking at buying in '97, and when we ended up buying 5 acres for $4,500. Is it 5 acres for $4,500? That's not bad. That's a darn good price. That's a really good price. Howdy Gardens here saying hello. Howdy. I mean, sometimes you can find really good deals. Sometimes you can find really good deals, and you wonder why this is a really good deal. You get out there and you have a look. Is it maybe the water's no good? Maybe you don't have water. Maybe you've got a lot of trash that came along with it that's got to be cleaned up. So, from a little minor Superfund site or something. A cheap land can have its problems. Sometimes it can be a good deal. And one of the best ways that you can find out whether that cheap land is going to be a problem or a good deal is if you are tapped into a rural community. In other words, talking to other people who are already homesteaders, and you're going to find a whole lot of them bouncing around here. You'll find them over there at Greg's place. You'll find them at just about every single channel member that pops up and says howdy that has a channel. You're going to be able to encounter other people that are out there in the country or out there working or want to be. Keep in touch with folks that are already out there, because whenever land comes up available, they're going to know well before the real estate agent in town is going to show it to you. And chances are, if they're already homesteaders, they may be good neighbors, and you might not have to worry about installing a small dairy in order to be able to have access to milk and cheese on a regular basis. You can already have, hopefully, some aspects of that community there already if you are in touch with people in the country that can tell you, hey, there's an acreage coming up. And they can tell you whether or not it's worth your time and effort to get it. But also, once again, do not overlook the possibility that you may want to incorporate and establish a for-profit business venture of a farm with multiple investors with a land partnership agreement. And under the land partnership agreement, you can arrange for every participating member as they invest to receive a portion of the overall parcel that you're buying, because you have to buy the land in bulk if you want to get the good deal on the land. And that, of course, gives you that opportunity to have, here's a large area that we have as an orchard that we're going to use that everybody can make use of. Here's an area for woodlot. Here's grazing area that we can use for grazing cattle and sheep and goats and pigs and everything else we want to have. And each person in that partnership agreement can be taking care of a different aspect of the farming operation. So you don't have to have every single person raising cattle just to have milk, discovering that you're going to get 300 gallons a year per cow. That's a lot of milk. And it might be more than the average family might want. So your average cow, whenever she's in milk, is producing 6 to 7 gallons a day. If you're going for a more specifically milk-intensive breed like a Holstein, you can bump that up to 9, sometimes higher, depending upon the diet that you're feeding them. So that's a lot of milk, and it's a lot of milk for one family to use all themselves. It's 1.25 gallons of milk per pound of cheese, and that cow is going to crank out anywhere from, I mean, we're talking, if you're not going with specifically a milking cow and you're just going to go with a general breed, that cow is going to be producing up to 6 or 7 gallons a day. It's just a huge amount. And once again, you don't just get the one cow, though. It's not sustainable to have a herd of one cow. One cow eventually becomes no cow. It's about 3 years that you get good milking out of a cow. 4th year, it starts falling off. 5th year, you're going to be wondering why you spent so much time and effort on feeding the thing and why you haven't turned it into hamburger. Sad reality, but in order to keep your dairy cattle in peak performance, you do have to rotate them. They have a limited shelf life. Similar to laying poultry as well. There's a limited shelf life for hens to lay and produce eggs. And then their production starts to drop off, and it's best to cull them at that point. Well, does that mean that you have chicken for the pot? Absolutely, it means you have chicken for the pot, or ducks for the pot. Whenever you're hatching out the babies, a few of them are going to be roosters or drakes in the case of ducks. You don't need that many roosters. You don't need that many drakes. So once again, you've got animals heading for the pot. Why am I talking about that? Oh, well, realities of farm life. The realities of farm life is if you want milk, you're going to have to go to an awful lot of expense, or you're going to have to find a way to deal with your excess milk. And one of the best ways to deal with your excess milk, of course, is to have a ready-made community. So just saying, you might want to consider establishing that community from the very beginning. All right. So Vicky, incidentally, guys, the people who don't know, she'll tell you all about it. So I'm gonna talk about it for a moment because you know I'm kind of impressed. Vicky spent a lot of time thinking about where she wanted her property. She spent her working years uh, intelligently and got a very nice acreage out in Arkansas. It's 100 acres, I think, and I believe you were saying you were adding more onto it. So that's that's the property. So this said last year plan on how to develop and invested in equipment. This year we're working on developing infrastructure. Next year we're planning to have production. So with 100 acres, you have the ability to produce the stuff that you need for yourself, but also you have the ability to produce income. That's good as well. In fact, income's great. Me personally, having experience with large animals and animal husbandry, we husbandry large animals, horses, goats. Goats aren't that big, but cattle are. I had experience with cattle. And one thing I can tell you, you're going to raise livestock, any kind of livestock, you're going to have livestock die on you. And big livestock leaves big carcasses. That's hard to deal with. You have to dig deep holes. You have to carry them. They're heavy. Cows are heavy. Cows are heavy, period, whenever it's time to butcher them. They're a pain in the butt. You got to hoist them up. Your equipment has to be able to handle the weight. You got to get the entrails out, get them bled, get them cooled off, get them sectioned up, and get them processed fast, or the meat doesn't turn out good. Typically speaking, it's hard to do a backyard butchery of cattle if you're just starting out, unless you're investing in heavy duty equipment. The stuff that you use to dress deer, it won't work. But that means you're paying for extra infrastructure. Does everybody that wants to homestead have to pay for this infrastructure? Does everybody who wants to homestead have to buy a $30,000 or $40,000 tractor? I mean, you can get the little mini compact for 20, and that's cute and everything, but is it going to do everything you really want it to do? Maybe not. So once again, you really want to have the ability to pool resources. If you can find a rural community that's amenable to doing such things, you can go out there and go, hey, we're thinking about buying property in the area. Is there the possibility of leasing, borrowing, trading, work sharing, and other such things for access to combines, tractors, et cetera, or are there pieces of equipment and implements that the community would like to have that I can make the purchase of and bring in? So I have this thing that we can also bring in and share. This is something to take into consideration. Let's see. Ken is saying, speaking of community, you still have the member section on the website, trying to figure out how we can reach out. I no longer have the member section on the website because, unfortunately, I was getting just too many people coming in and using the access to the member section to create spam accounts, and every day was clearing out spam. And I'm not making the kind of money that I would want to be making to expend that amount of time every day clearing out spam. So at the moment, I do not have the members section, but ways that you can reach out if you want to stay in touch. I do have a Facebook account. Jason Neighbors, pick me up or check me out on Facebook. You can reach me there. Obviously, you can send me emails. My contact information is on the website already, so don't feel shy. Send me an email. I read emails at least once or twice a day. Having things that aren't spam is always nice because I get a lot of spam, and usually it's from companies that want me to advertise their product for them, and I don't see a whole lot of products out there that I would really wholeheartedly endorse and advertise. Take, for example, today, I was looking at numerous sites where there were attorneys advertising, setting up real estate land partnership agreements. People plug in their business, lots of them out there. And I looked at that and was like, do I really want to put up links for this? No, because it's easy enough for you to do the search, and you're probably going to want one that's near you anyway. Somebody that you can actually go sit down across from, look them in the eye and go, are you a psychopath? Are you going to take advantage of me, or can you be trusted? All right. Heterodox and sheep and bunnies if you're old and single for the kind of livestock that you want. Sheep don't require quite as much effort to wrangle. Not only whenever you're handling them, moving them about, but also whenever it comes time to butcher them, whenever it comes time to milk them, it's not so hard to control them. When it comes to trying to shear them, not so hard to control them. And if they die unexpectedly and you don't want to trust the meat for whatever reason, they're not that hard to drag off to a hole and bury. Never, 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 ever, ever dispose of dead animal carcasses by dragging them off to some deserted area in the back of nowhere and leaving the carcasses. That causes a boost in the coyote population, and you do not want a boosted coyote population. Nobody wants a boosted coyote population. All right. Sure. Carolyn was saying, I'm also going to put up a link before too long if I don't forget about it or one of the moderators has got the link, could drop the link to survival, the survivaltribenetwork.com. I'll see if I can find it in here somewhere. It'll take me a moment. Let's see. It's not there. Dead air. Dead air. Horrible stuff. We got dead air. Well, I never can find it whenever I type in the search parameters if I'm looking for Survival Tribe Network, because it's just not it's not being promoted by Google. Oh, you know what I should do? Instead of doing this, I should go look at my inbox and look for the latest news bulletin that I've gotten from Rebecca. That probably would be good, right? There it is. So let me copy link address. Here we go. I should have just done this in the first place. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Let me move this out of the way. So if you're looking for community, preferably not a bunch of psychopaths, people that have been vetted, people that you can trust, here is a place where you can look for and find people that you can partner up with out there at survivaltribenetwork.com. Great place to find community. All right. Carolyn was saying, I've been hearing a lot about these Dexter breed of cow. I think David the Good was talking about these Dexters. Dual purpose, smaller cows, give about 2 or 3 gallons of milk per day. And they are most of the time A2 milk cows. Okay. So smaller breeds. And I was actually contemplating this. The problem with keeping hogs. Obviously, you can't keep a hog in your backyard, right? What about smaller breeds of pig? How small can we get? Can we get it to the point where it's feasible to have backyard pigs? No, it's not feasible to have backyard pigs. You're not going to be able to get small enough to have backyard pigs, but you might possibly, if you have enough space, you might be able to get away with raising peccaries. So we have a native peccary here in North America called the javelina. And it's a relative of the pig, but much smaller and a little bit leaner. But they do definitely taste like pork, and you could possibly raise javelina instead. But that's going to have an entirely new set of burrowing and digging issues that come along with it, and it may not be suitable for a backyard either. I'm not going to try to grow javelina in our backyard. We'll put it that way. All right. I was talking about different breeds of cattle. The cattle come in fads too. Livestock animals in general come in fads. When I was first starting up the YouTube channel and looking at what was going on with all the homesteaders popping up, lots and lots of homesteaders, it's beautiful to see it. And coming from a small hobby farm homestead, well, I don't know, what do you call the 144 head dairy farm, the small hobby farm? it was being treated like a hobby farm because it was not a for-profit operation. But it was essentially your 10-acre homestead where you're importing a whole bunch of your feed costs and not really running it efficiently at all. But that's what I was exposed to. So I've seen all of the animals, all of the crops, all of the equipment, all of the expense, and it adds up. And if you don't know what you're doing, it's just crippling. It's just a horrible thing. Fortunately, we have a lot better tools for marketing nowadays than we had when I was a kid. Ken's talking about Guernsey, yeah. My uncle used to raise Holsteins. He operated a dairy operation, and then he switched over to raising the cattle for meat because it was less labor intensive to raise beef cattle than it was to raise dairy cattle. But I believe he had at its peak 100 heifers in rotation for a dairy operation. So I'm not entirely inexperienced. I mean, he didn't press gang me into work, but I got to see it work. You know what I mean? Most of the time when we went over to visit that particular uncle, the cousins and I would be in the barn where the hay was being kept, building forts out of hay because he had to have tons of hay in that hay barn, keeping it dry. Yeah, they didn't necessarily like it. We were going out there and playing, the hay bale's going to fall, you're going to have a nice day. Yeah, we built really good. We practiced in the off season. You got to understand, we practiced in the off season with dominoes, right? Because dominoes, they have this particular shape and profile. You stack 2 or 3 of them on top of each other, and they now conform to about the size of the hay bale. And you build your buildings with these blocks that have the size and shape of hay bales. And you can try to make sure you have the most sturdy structure. And I'd sit there with marbles and build castles this way and try to make sure that they were sturdy. So lots of experience building relatively strong tension structures during the off season. And then when it came time for family get-togethers that were at the Jordan place, we would have fun in the hay barn. But anyway, Joe's on Mexican time. I suspect it's exactly the same time we're on, but trying to squeeze every last bit of daylight out, I suppose. I mean, I would right now if I didn't have a show that I was doing. I usually do try to get every last bit of daylight. Right now is a great time to be out there. It's nice and it's cool. There's still, well, I guess the light's going away now, but there was a while there's a little bit of light left where you can do some of your chores, a little bit of weeding. I wrote a note here for me to go over to the west wall, which isn't a wall yet, and prune and clear out the area where the gourds are. This cryptic message. I've got maybe 4 loofah gourd plants started on the west side where the fence is. It's not a wall yet, it's a fence. One day it will be a retaining wall, but now it's a fence. And I have about another 3 or 4 birdhouse gourds over there on the west side. But the trees on the fence line grow out and over, and they're now at that point where they're, instead of being a potential place for the gourds to climb up, they're shading the gourds out, and they're not getting enough light. So tomorrow's project is going to be clear that area out, pull up all the grass, mulch around them, and fertilize them. I'm going to pull the duck water, fertilize over there, and then do a little bit more chop and drop if I can. Sometime here in the near future, I'm going to have to order up an entire load or a pallet or 2 of cement blocks and get to work seriously on this other gopher-proof bed, because just having ducks trampling around apparently is not enough to chase away the gophers. They're getting to my garlic. So if I want to have garlic in the future, I'm gonna have to find a way to keep it away from the gophers, and that means some more gopher-proof beds. Sad to say. Gophers are also being interesting. I guess I could give you a little report on things we are growing. Would you like to hear a report on things we're growing since we're going into overtime? Here's the things that we're growing that I have to report on. Onions, alliums, doing really well in the raised beds, except for the new one that I didn't properly amend before we got started. That one's kind of not great. It's got a yacon in it and a couple of oka in it that are doing okay. Hopefully they manage to get through the poor soil and survive, and I have more to propagate next year. I do not have enough of those particular plants to put them out there to see what the gopher's going to do with them. I have a large amount of Stachys affinis, which is the Chinese artichoke, or Crohn's, spelled Crosnes, Crohn's, or mint root is another name for it. It is a lamium with the square stems and little fuzzy mint leaves that produces pretty little mint flowers whenever it goes to flower. But most notably, this particular plant produces an edible, nutty, crunchy tuber that's about the size of my pinky, each one. Multiple tubers, hopefully, for each plant. But I start each plant with one tiny tuber about the size. We'll see how big they grow and how good they are as a starchy root vegetable. But so far, I planted a couple out there next to the gopher-proof bed, and I planted a bunch in the gopher-proof bed. The ones in the gopher-proof bed, they don't seem to care that the soil in there is not all that great. They're growing just fine. And the ones that are in the hedgerow right next to it in the shade, it's because I wanted to test them out in a few different positions. They seem to be able to grow in the shade just fine. I don't know if it's going to affect their tubers or not, but they're growing in the shade. And so far, the gophers haven't attacked them. I put a few more out where the ducks could get to them. The ducks dug them up and ate them. So it may be one of the things that we can grow in the shade, but we have to keep it away from the ducks. But this is yet another one of those. As a lamium, as a member of the mint family, it kind of falls into the category of ground cover. And then the question is, well, how much sunlight and how much shade can this particular one take? And I don't know yet. But I will find out, and I will keep you posted. We're not going to have them for sale right away, but they are promising, and probably not this spring, but next year we're going to have them. Crohn's or Stachys affinis, or otherwise known as Chinese artichoke. It's not really an artichoke. Artichoke is actually a form of thistle, and we do have some. Those are safflowers. Anyway, we're growing that one out. It's doing well. Looks like we're going to have lots of walking onions come spring. I've got a fairly good crop of black locust trees coming up. We have the ones that we dug out and isolated. That it was just too late in the year to get around to selling them whenever I dug them out. And at first I wasn't even sure if I was going to. There's a couple states I can't ship them to, period, because they're invasive in those states. Otherwise, it's an excellent little barrier tree. But we've probably got about a dozen right now that are mature, ready to ship. A few more that are probably a little bit bigger than I want to ship, considering the cost of boxes that they go in. It's about $2.50 a box to ship the tree of this size. More if it's larger, so I'd have to print them back. Anyway, we started a whole bunch from root cuttings. They grow really well from root cuttings, so we're going to have loads of black locust come fall. We're going to have quite a few red buds, and we're having a lot more success with red buds. At the moment, I've got like 7 pecan trees, not a whole lot. I'm going to try to get more started this fall. But it looks like we will have a good mast year, lots of nuts coming from the tree this year. And since we do have a good mast year coming up, that means a lot of potential for a lot more seedling starts. So this fall, not a lot of pecans. Next fall, a lot of pecans. And possibly some other things. I've got several hazelnuts coming up, and it looks like I'll be able to duplicate a lot of those, clone a lot of those. Mulberries, I'm working on cloning. I've got, I think, I said 5 earlier. I turned, it's actually 6. I have 6 started mulberry cuttings. I don't know how many of those I'm going to sell. I may not sell any. I might just wind up replanting those because I had a bunch of black mulberries I ordered up from the nursery that I was planning on growing for the nice, sweet, very sweet black mulberry fruits. And only one of those survived. But I still have the same idea. I want to have a bunch of mulberries so I can gather that leaf fall for the sulfur content to amend the soil to be good for alliums and garlic, onions and garlic, and things like that. So, and other berry bushes for that matter. All that's coming up. Coming up here in the next couple of weeks, I have a video coming out where we are capturing strawberry runners and propagating strawberries from their runners. Doing that with our Albion everbearing strawberries with the intention eventually of having those available for sale as well, because they are an excellent little everbearing strawberry. Right now, they're done fruiting, but if we have the right conditions before the end of the year, they will put on another batch of flowers and have another flush of fruit. This interim period, instead of reproducing sexually by producing fruit and seeds, they're reproducing with runners. So they're sending the runners out up to 2 or 3 feet, and then all along each segment in that runner, every like foot and a half or so, 18 inches or so. This is the spacing they're trying to establish, right? They're trying to tell you how far apart they want to be spaced, because this is how far apart the nodes are on the runners. So every 18 inches or so, they've got a node with a new set of leaves popping up. So all we have to do is capture those and put them into the soil, cover them up with soil just enough so that the underside can start to develop its root structure. Once it's rooted, we clip it away from the plant, and then we go plant it somewhere else. And I've got a new bed up under the maple tree that I set up just for propagating strawberries. And we'll probably set up another couple of them, because strawberries are a great ground cover plant. I love strawberries. I don't know, maybe somebody out there that doesn't like strawberries, but there's not a whole lot of people that hate strawberries. We'll put it that way. And this is a good one. You saw how big those berries got, and they were sweet and delicious. Good. So that's all. More nursery news and stuff up and coming. So once again, for the people that missed it, daylilies, tomorrow morning, whenever I get up, tomorrow morning, I'm going to be switching the quantity available on our website of daylilies for sale to 0. And they will stay at 0 until fall arrives and they're done with flowering. So if anybody wants to put in an order for daylilies, do it before tomorrow morning. That's all I'm saying. And with that, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom just to catch up with everybody before y'all take. Oh, my goodness. You guys are wonderful. You all are talking amongst each other, and I can't keep up. Heterodox just happened to say milking, is a lot of work, no vacations. It's great for developing grip strength, guys. I'll tell you what. Even though we did not milk every single goat that we have, I can still do it with my eyes closed, and I have excellent grip strength. Yeah. Oh, Carolyn, if you're talking about who has, David got Dexter's, and I think Brian got Dexter's too. Flannel Farms got Dexter's, and let's see, Morgan at Goldshaw got the Scottish cattle, the little fuzzy headed ones. Those are fattish right now. Oh yeah, I was going to mention earlier, whenever I first got started on YouTube, the fad was Kiko goats. And I looked at them and went, what are these? And then I looked at the genetics and was like, oh, why are these the fad? And also, why are people not pulling them? It was weird to me. It's like, why did you get this goat? You go and you milk it and you go, I don't like the way this milk tastes. Well, why do you not like the way this milk tastes? Oh, well, you got a goat that would be probably okay for meat, but not probably that great for milk. And if you wanted milk, you can get good milk. If you're in a mountainous territory, get alpines. If you're hilly but not mountainous, get Saanens, and if you're on flatland, get Nubians. And all of those have perfectly good meat too. Mainly, you want them because they have good milk. Try to avoid the miniature and fancy frou breeds. Pygmies are no good. Milk doesn't taste good. They don't smell very good either. Pygmies stink worse than anything. Fainting goats, I'm sure, are all fascinating due to their behavioral habits, and some people want to get them just because they'll faint whenever there's a predator nearby. That alerts the livestock dogs, and is part of an overall livestock protection strategy. Okay, that makes sense. But there are a lot of different breeds out there I wouldn't consider getting. Flatland Saanens, flatland Nubians, hilly land Saanens, and very, very hilly land Toggenburgs. Toggenburgs have really high milk fat, by the way. So if you're interested in having lots of butter and lots of cheese, Toggenburgs are for you. And the milk is excellent. It really is. Toggenburg and Sauna milk, you got to blend the two of them together. You get this really, really creamy, high milk fat, really dense protein milk. It's awesome. Really good stuff. If you haven't had it, you're just missing out. But no, face go on them on. But raw Jersey milk, freaking amazing. Like sweet so. Oh yeah, raw milk is awesome. Yeah, the milking vacation happens when the cow dries up. Yeah, but if you're trying to operate a dairy and you're rotating your freshening, you always have cows with milk, and which means you're always milking. You're not getting away from it. You don't pack up and go to the homestead meet in the middle of in the middle of your busy season, right? these, these homestead meetings, they crack me up. Just people go to them. It's like, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have the inclination. I don't have the gas money. Most of them are out of my range anyway. If I'm not out there, visit, come back, and taking care of the ducks, then I run the risk of losing ducks. That's just the way it works. And I just have ducks. We got people out there that have a lot more than ducks, and they're trying to fit in going to homestead meetups, and they wind up getting home and discover they've lost livestock. This happens to people all the time. Happened to the Robinsons last year. And this year, they switched the still went out to meetups again. But you have to be aware of these things. I was thinking perhaps that one of these days I might set up a meetup in the middle of the winter. And if we go for like December, we can fit it in close to winter breaks, but not necessarily tie up people's Christmas. If you fit it in December, it'll give people time to come out and visit and hang out, and it won't be time for the kids to drop, and it won't be time for the cows to freshen, and it won't be time for anybody to be planting anything. It won't be time for anybody to be harvesting anything. You might be doing some overall maintenance and fence repair or stuff like that, but this is the time whenever a lot of the homesteading business slows down, and people who are actual homesteaders might be able to get together and have a social get together where they can interact and have a cookout and maybe hang out at Mohawk Park, which has these wonderful covered pavilions with huge pits for barbecue, and we could probably set that up. Lots of hotels in and around the Tulsa area, so you're not scrambling to try to find accommodations and fit everybody in, and other things that happen whenever you go to places like Pryor, which is not set up for conventions at all. Of course, Lake Keystone, beautiful place. Don't really trust the lake because I've been around here too long and seen what it looks like whenever it floods. There's little brown things floating in it, if you know what I mean. But I mean, otherwise, it looks nice. Not where I would go for a vacation or a meetup, but to each his own, I suppose. I'm thinking about doing something in the winter. Maybe that's a good idea. Maybe not. Who knows? Comments below. I'm going to get out of here, guys. We've run into an hour and a half, and I could probably keep on talking all night long, but I do need to go to bed because tomorrow I need to get out there and I need to prune back the trees that are on our fence line on the west so that our loofah gourds can get up there and climb up and grow, and some of the birdhouse gourds over there can get established properly. We've got a good crop of birdhouse gourds coming up right now, so we're going to have more seeds available. We do still have the seeds for birdhouse gourds. We do still have the seeds for big house spotted corn or big horse spotted corn available, and we will have them available all through the year at all times of the year. Our seeds will always be for sale if we have them in stock, because you can get them and you can hold them until next spring we want to. If you're growing corn, you can grow a second crop of corn in the middle of the season right now with big horse. It only takes 90 days from the time that you put the seed in the ground to the time that you're pulling ears of corn off of the plant. We're not talking 90 days after it emerges. We're talking 90 days, period. It's up, done, gone. Pull the old stalks out, plant a new crop. If you have, say, 180 to 200 days of planting season, you can get two crops of this corn in. So we're going to have that available all year round. And this fall, the seed that I collected from our first planting, and eventually the seed that I collected from our second planting, once it dries in and is ready to remove from the cob, will be moved into rotation, and the old seed that we have for sale right now will get turned into cornmeal, and I will eat it. because I don't see any reason in keeping seed more than a year, other than just in case of an emergency. I've got a little reserve that I can fall back on and plant that if something horrible happens and I have to restart. I have enough to do that. But other than that, I don't see any reason to keep that any longer. So every season I'll have fresh seed instead of trying to preserve for an extended period of time. We'll just keep on rotating it. So you'll always get fresh seed from us. I figured that's the best way to do it anyway. So we sell it or we eat it, period. That's what we're going to do with seed. It's the all sell it or eat it guarantee. Who knows? Next year, I may introduce castor beans to the seeds that we offer. I might start adding poppies. They produce a lot of seeds, and we're starting to have some success with growing poppies. I probably should have mentioned that. We're growing a nice little bread seed poppy. Pretty little red flowers. Of course, they make the little balls there that you are not allowed to score for collecting the latex from, if you know what I mean. But they make wonderful flowers, providing pollen, and specifically pollen, to your local bee population, which is what they come for. They don't drink the nectar; they come to gather pollen. And as it turns out, bees need, in addition to nectar, they need large quantities of pollen. So one of the ways you can provide your bees with lots of pollen that they can benefit from is to grow poppies. And that's the reason why you grow them. And the fact that you can use them as a potential painkiller if everything falls apart is not a huge downside either. It is legal to grow Papaver somniferum, the bread seed poppy, which is also the opium poppy, exactly the same poppy. Absolutely legal to grow it. It is not legal to take your pocket knife out whenever the poppy flower has fallen off of the seed head while it's still standing there. It is absolutely illegal to do this. Take your knife and just cut a couple little scores around the outside. Your knife has to be sharp for this, and this one needs to be resharpened, so you can't do it with this knife. Don't ask me how I know. It's not legal to do this, to make those scoring marks on your poppy seed heads while they're still standing in the field, just after the petals have fallen, and then allow the sap, the latex sap, to well up inside, and of course brought up by the pressure inside the plant, of course, pumping it out, so that it accumulates, turns dark, and you can then scrape it off. Absolutely, totally illegal to do this. And gather that, put it to the side for use whenever somebody has an extreme problem with pain, or perhaps maybe has a lot of congestion, painful cough, and you want to be able to allow them to have protective coughs without that intense pain. You don't want to have that available to mix with alcohol to administer. That would be completely illegal to do. But it's legal to grow the poppy, is what I'm trying to say. And if things change, having that plant available might be something that you'd be interested in doing. All right. Vicky says, I bought plenty of strawberries last year, but something ate all of them this spring. We're talking about the plants or the strawberries themselves. Some people are allergic. Fortunately, not one of them. All of the June bearing strawberries, we bought a bunch at discount last summer, or I guess last spring. And we were getting this was like an early sale. It wasn't late sale. It was an early sale. They were like 99 cents a plant. I was like, okay, I bought them. They were at the box store, and these were all June bears. I bought a whole bunch of them. I planted them all out. They did not make it through the year. They did not make it. But meanwhile, the albions keep on going. And Aradox is saying, yeah, and this is true. If you have bird water, bird bath close to the berries, it helps. If you were providing water to your birds, period, I mean, enough, they are not going to eat that many of your fruits. James Prigioni was talking about having to put nets around his. I talked about this last week. He's having to put nets around his peas. I was like, James, one thing I haven't noticed whenever you're walking around giving the tour of your food forest, I have not noticed a lot of surface water available for the wild animals. I don't see it. And you never talk about it, which makes me think it's probably not there. And if it's not there and you're having problems with the birds eating your strawberries and eating your peas, I think I know why the birds are eating your strawberries and your peas. They're thirsty, and those are rich and full of water. Because it's a food forest system, your fruits and your vegetables are full of water. It's kind of one of the nice advantages. Makes them sweet, and of course makes them uh, delicious for the birds to come and attack if you don't have the water. So, I mean, one of the big things, huge things that we've noticed since we have put these water sources out, huge increase in the number of lizards, huge increase in the number of amphibians, and of course, a swelling in the number of birds as well. We already had more birds because of the bird baths. This just keeps the water there all the time, and it's really starting to have an impact. Yes, Mary's mother, and actually Mary almost became a goat farm kid herself, but her mom got ones for goat hair, turned the milk into butter. So there are hair goats. They're called mohair or angora. Sorry, they're called angora. The, a mohair sweater is made out of angora wool. My hand, no, an angora sweater is made out of angora wool, and a uh, mohair sweater is made from Angora rabbit, something like that. I can't get them straight. Anyway, their breeds are made specifically for fibers for hair. So think of sheep as being for fiber. For the wool, there are goats that serve the same purpose. Mm-hmm. I have gas money. I hate. Yeah, this is true. I hate to drive. There's a bunch of crazy people on the roads just every day. Vicky saying, I've heard that Nigerian doors are high fat milk producers, but they also make just really apparently foul tasting milk, which might be related to being really high fat producers. Fat goes rancid quickly, and that might have something to do with that. And a lot of these people that I've seen the raising of the ghosts, they have no idea how to keep teats clean and how to keep them from stepping in the buckets and how to handle them as milkers. It's like, and you can also milk them. Oh, that's nice because people are raising them as it's a hobby farm. It's not an actual working functional farm. A lot of people that you see doing YouTube channels that are homesteading, their homesteads are not they're not functional homesteads. It's a prop. It's a set. It's a hobby. I'd like for people to move beyond hobby and into something practical because I grew up on a hobby farm and it was not fun being a kid on a hobby farm that wasn't making money. There you go. That's why you get and train farm sitters, no doubt. When I was talking a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about small homestead profits, it's like I don't have anything. I'd love to get started, but I don't have anything. Hey, you don't have anything. That means you don't have anything to tie you down. That means get in touch with members of the community and go, hey, I am available for farm sitting, for training as auxiliary farmhand. I'm a volunteer. I'd like to have food in my belly and a roof over my head and maybe a place to plug in my iPhone every now and then. But other than that, you don't have to pay me all that much. Or maybe you do whenever you want to turn your operation over and so you can go out and do things. There is a serious need for farm sitters. That's a great way to pick up a little extra cash if you're like a 4-H kid or something like that. Mary's talking about posting videos. I've got one that I did on what was the one that we were covering the other day? Chop and drop, because I needed to get it done. I had sweet potatoes that were getting overgrown with my cover crop, and I needed to cut out around there and do that. But I talk in the video that Mary took, and I don't know what she's going to do in terms of editing, but I do a lot of talking about this chaotic method of gardening that I'm employing in certain areas where I just prep the soil, throw down a whole bunch of seeds, and plant a few other extra things in there. And then as everything starts to grow in, I come back in with a sickle later on, and I start cutting back the alfalfa, and I cut back the clover, and I'm going to cut out some of the daikon radishes, and maybe drop this plant over here, that plant over there, and get this lamb's quarter. And all of the stuff that's growing here does different things, right? It does different things for the soil. In some cases, it's just putting sugars in. Some cases, just biomass. Some cases, it's producing nitrogen, so on and so forth. But I take the excess bits and I lay them down, and that's now fertilizer and mulch for the plants I'm trying to grow as vegetables. So I'll have a canna over here, and I cut down everything around it and lay that down. That's mulch. Now it becomes fertilizer for the canna, and I'm growing my fertilizer and I'm growing the mulch and I'm keeping the ground covered all at the same time. And it looks like a chaotic mess until I get there and start, cutting back the things that I are superfluous that I don't need. And that's just soil building. It's putting in fertility again. Um, Fun stuff, fun stuff. But Mary got a whole bunch of footage of that and how that idea works, and hopefully managed to show it better than hopefully I do most of the time with the cheesy camera that I'm using whenever I'm trying to work. If somebody was following me around with the camera, we probably have a lot better production value. All right. There you go. Mary, or sorry. See, I'm getting tired now. But you can say, as I was saying, you can either get sap or seeds from any given poppy. That's correct. Because if you're collecting the sap, you have to score the seed pod just after the leaves fall. And now the plant is going to be busy pumping up the latex to seal the hole that you cut into the seed pod. And while it's cranking out that latex and generating the latex, the seeds are not maturing. And so the seeds never get to a point where they would properly mature. And so you either grow your poppies, let them go to seed, and you get the seeds from them. And they make a lot of seeds per flower, which is what I do. And then you can replant them, reseed them, sell them, etc. But if you were trying to harvest the latex, you would have to give up on getting seeds from that seed pod. The seeds would never mature. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, goats are good at stepping into the bucket. They do it. Whew. Anytime you bring a bucket over there, with the way we did it was we had the bucket that the milk went in, but we didn't milk the goat into the bucket that the milk went in. We would take a small pan, that like a bowl, and hold that in our hand, and then we would go ahead and have this to the side, establish the grip on the teat, and then bring it in here, and then we've already closed off the top, and then just complete the motion like this, right? And the milk goes into the bowl, and take the bowl over, and it goes into the bucket. And then you hold here, up, let the milk drop, establish your grip, bowl in. And this way, if the goat does decide to get a little kicky or something like that, it's only one small bowl full of milk, and you can get it out of the way quickly. It's agile. It's not an entire bucket you got to wheel it around. They can't step into the bucket because the bucket's nowhere near them. And this is kind of what you learn to do after a while, so keep them from doing this, because they're insidious. Vicky's saying our first major project is a Wallapini. I'm insisting it has living quarters for me. I love where your head's at. I love where your head's at. The idea of having a greenhouse that I can live in is something that really captured my imagination. I grew up when I was little. My mom worked in a greenhouse as a job that she was doing to make ends meet while she was finishing getting her teaching certificate. And shortly after, I think probably around 5 or so, she started dropping me off at daycare. As kindergarten daycare, dropped me off, take care of work, and then it would, by the time it was like by the end of 5 to 6, it was no longer daycare anymore. She'd have me in at the school with her. So I'm walking around 5 or 6, 5 years old, I think. I was walking around at the school, and I have a memory of that. It's like I come around the corner, and the sunlight strikes me on the face, and I go, "Hi, here I am. I'm aware." 5 years old, and I've been able to remember everything that happened ever since then. But before that, my memories are a little bit sketchy. But I do recall very intently the smell of peat moss and the smell of fertilizer, and the humidity of the air, and the feel of the air inside of the greenhouse. It's a very comforting sensation to me, because I stayed in a playpen in the greenhouse while my mom worked. So those very very early years while I was learning how to babble talk, that language that all babies have, I was in the playpen inside of a greenhouse. Yeah, there you go. Face plugging that garden tour video. Yeah, the amaranth is pretty. Right now, Mary should have gotten some pictures of it. Right now on the front strip, we have some of the daikon radish beginning to go to seed, and this is unexpected, completely unintended consequence. But the flower stalk for the daikon radish and the buckwheat flowers are at about the same height, and when you intermix the two of them, you get white buckwheat flowers on the annual buckwheat and pink daikon radish flowers on the daikon radishes. And the blend of the two together just looks stunning. And somebody walks by or walk by or ride by or drive by, and they look over there and go, look at that bank of beautiful flowers. And in front of it, we've got the orange daylilies. And in front of the orange daylilies, I've got a shorter Stella d'Oro. And they're bouncing back from last year's drought that we were supposed to have this full lush band of flowers that you're going to look at this year. But water company digging kind of messed up my plans for that. And then behind that, we've got the dahlias that tower up above everything. And then we've got the cannas, which are also very, very large. So the cannas are coming in about 4 or 5, 6 foot. They can get pretty big. The sunflowers that we've got, annual sunflowers, are even getting in some cases 7 foot taller than that. So as we go back into underneath the shade of the pecan trees and in between the walkways that are there in the garden, we have this increasing bank of flowers, higher and higher and higher and higher, going back into the canopy. So the street effect is pretty cool once everything gets established and once everything's blooming. But yeah, happy dead roots. Those daikon radishes, whenever they rot, they're starting to do it now. They'll come disattached. Once they've gotten to a certain point, the tops will come detached from the root, the radish in the ground, and that just merrily rots away and feeds all the soil microbes. And of course, it's broken up the soil and done all that work. That if I tried to plow it, I would get similar work accomplished, but I would destroy the biome instead of building it. So it's kind of exciting. Vicky's saying, I heard that raw unpressed poppy sap is poison. And there is a, it's called, don't quote me on this. I may have the spelling wrong. Thebaine, 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 is another component that is found in poppies, particularly around the seeds. And this is like poppy seed tea. You can wind up poisoning yourself with the seeds because of this other component. It does have medicinal properties. It is used as a medicine. Of course, the difference between poison and medicine is dosage in a lot of cases. So you'll find large quantities of this whenever it's still in the milky stage. Once it's become black and tarry, once the gum darkens, that is the processing that is required to prevent the poisoning. But once again, it's illegal to do, so I can't recommend that you do it, because that would be called opium. Clay ground gardens. So Faith has got a clay ground garden. I tell you what, clay is interesting. A while back, I was saying having clay soil is the best soil you can have and having clay soil is the worst soil you can have because there are pros and cons. One of the pros of having lots of clay is if you're trying to start trees from cuttings and you've got a nice, fairly sheltered location that you get dappled shade in, and you've got lots of clay, and you can get that clay hydrated fairly well, so it's not hydrophobic. You can take your tree cuttings and cut a nice little 45-degree angle at the tip and moisten that clay down and stick your cutting into the clay and walk away and just make sure that it stays hydrated on a fairly regular basis. And clay holds moisture well enough that sometimes you can get them to root right there in the ground, which is kind of cool. I've got at least one hazelnut tree that I just had some prunings. I was like, well, it's late. I don't want to go to the trouble of trying to get these things started with anything like the rooting hormone or peat moss or anything. I don't want to do all that. I just shoved it into the ground in the hedgerow where we have lots of clay. And I've got at least one that said, okay, I'll root. So I pulled off one of my grandmother's stunts, which is grab a stick, stick it in the ground, and it grows into a tree. Yay! But yeah, usually I wind up killing the plant. I don't get anything that way. Faith is saying, I need to plant daikons. they they do have a rather pungent aroma. Don't worry about it. You're not going to be sitting there with your nose to the ground constantly, and it only lasts until the root rots away. None. Oh no, none of the sunflowers came up. Oh. Oh, yeah, that much time, they probably already rotted away. You'd have to go again. Something you can try out is mixing kitty litter in with your seeds. Mixing kitty litter if you have sandy soil, mixing in pelletized gypsum if you have clay soil, mixing in a little combination of both, or crumbled biochar if you've got normal ordinary soil. But you mix that in with your seeds to add a little bit of extra volume. So whenever you grab a handful of seeds, if you had nothing but seed and you grab a handful, you throw a handful, you just threw a handful of seeds. And usually the density that you wind by broadcast sowing with a handful of seeds at a time, all it's fun, it winds up wasting a lot of seeds. You sow way more seeds than you need. And a lot of them germinate, and then you have to come through and thin them out. It's a pain. So mix something up with your seeds, particularly little tiny fiddly ones. Mixing in sand with tiny seeds helps, so you have more volume, so the seeds are spread further apart. Further apart spreading means that you don't have to thin as much, and you don't have to throw as many seeds. But yeah, that's one of those situations where it looks like, yeah, you're just gonna have to go back and try again. Fortunately, sunflower seeds are cheap. I've had the worst trouble, really, with seed starting anything really. If I get something to start with seed, it's good. I'm a black thumb, horrible gardener. But we managed to get some of those poppies to start in our gopher proof bed. I just a little tiny strip of them, and there's like 5 poppy plants that started. The ones that reseeded themselves, and they will reseed themselves. So once we get them started, they will reseed. The ones that I put over there underneath the red buds reseeded, and I got 1 plant out of them. So hopefully, as time goes on, if they get used to growing here in Oklahoma, then we'll get more. This is not true, Mary. I did not allow the birds to plant all of my sunflower seeds. I did deliberately plant some, although quite often I wind up with volunteer sunflowers in odd places. I'm like, I did not plant those. I did not spill those. That's some chickadee went and grabbed the seed and dropped it on his way back to the hollow in the tree where they're raising their babies, and that's why we're getting these sunflowers. And I let them grow. Just let them. They don't hurt anything, and unless I have to remove a sunflower because it's shading something else out, or its root system is getting a little too close for comfort to something else's root system, because they will develop a really thick, robust taproot. If it's not hurting anything, I'm going to let that sunflower grow. Effectively, it's a weed, I guess. That's the thing. Try to be selective with your weeds. If you have weeds that you don't like, see if you can swap them out for weeds that you do like. Clover is a weed that I love. Alfalfa is a weed that I love. Hopefully, violets eventually will be a weed. I mean, they're going to require a bit more shade. Weeds that I love. Plantain, weed that I love. What else do we have going on? Maybe something that can handle both a little bit of sun and a little bit of shade. Maybe that Chinese artichoke, the crones. And somebody was saying that they cannot handle drought. So keep in mind this needs to be in and around places that get lots of water. That's mostly everywhere here. I try to make sure that I have water going on everywhere. Either I'm running a sprinkler or it's in ground with the trenches. Wow, I'm almost at 2 hours. Why am I going so long? Oh yeah, talking about the smell of daikon radish. Yes, a decomposing daikon radish does have a particular odor, but it's really not all that bad. It really isn't. You have to be right there over it to smell it. And if you're right there over it with your nose in it, yeah, you'll smell it. But if you're looking out at your patch of daikon radishes from a distance of 5 or 6 feet, if you've got a really sensitive nose, you might pick it up, but you're most likely you're not. And if you're downwind, you're not going to smell it either. Hush your mouth. We're not moving north. Between Waterloo to St. Louis, south, I'd say East Texas. Yeah, I wouldn't mind going into East Texas, maybe Northeast Texas. But then you have plenty of water. This is the important thing. You have to have water. If you don't have water, you're toast. And if you're out West Texas or West Oklahoma into New Mexico or Utah, Nevada, Arizona, you're going to have larger amounts of land to begin with, because you're going to have to harvest water off of a larger area, because you do not get as much water, as much rainfall as we get here. If you're looking for 1 inch if you were looking for 1 inch of rainfall per week to irrigate or water a place, Oklahoma has 40 inches of rain a year on the average. That's plenty of water. The only problem is we don't get it at convenient times. We have to store or bank some of it. Places like Arizona, you can go out there, and in the desert, you can find places that get 10 to 20 inches in a year, which means that if you're going to grow stuff, you're going to have to harvest some water from elsewhere to make up the difference. Ideally, you do enough regenerative farming, and maybe that water comes a bit easier. Talking about starting in clay, says elderberry heterodox, saying elderberry is easiest to plant in clay. Place cuttings in December before the ground freezes. Good advice. We currently have the one. I got two. One of them survived. It's a Sambucus niger, which is the black elderberry, edible culinary elderberry, not the European. So hopefully we'll be able to propagate more of that come fall. Did a broadcast adjustment before I started planting, but now I'm thinking I'm not sure the adjustment really hit where I planted the sunflowers on that edge. But fortunately, I mean, as long as it's fairly close in proximity, but as it gets wet and it starts to depelletize itself and work its way into the surround, it'll flocculate, break up those clumps, and still be of some benefit. Any further north is just. I think any further north from here is just too cold. I like having a 200-day growing season. Yeah, I somewhat underestimated the power of last year's dark drought. Anyway, so guys, I have been going for almost 2 hours here, so I am going to go ahead and call it a night. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, of course, we're going out there pruning, rescuing the I can't think of what they are. Rescuing the loofah gourds that we have growing on the west wall, or what is currently the west fence, because we have not built the wall yet. What else do I have to do tomorrow? I might try to capture more strawberries. I've got video shot, so the first part of capturing strawberries is shot. It's in the can. And then we're going to come back in, I think, 2 weeks and start looking and seeing if we've got rooted strawberries. And if they rooted, then we're going to cut them free from the parents, and then we're going to take them over to the propagation area where I'm intentionally propagating more strawberries. So that's 2 weeks from now. We're going to have that. This coming up week, we're going to have another video on fertilizing using ducts. I'm going to go through and break down very, very simply and easily how you take the water produced by raising a small group of ducks and transform that into fertilizer that you can use for just about everything. You're going to get from 4 ducks, I'll tell you right off the bat, from 4 ducks, you're going to get the ability to cover 30,000 square feet of area with fertilizer for a low but fairly constant delivery fertilizer system, which will include some of your effective microorganisms that you wanted to introduce to your soil in the first place along with it. So it is a carrier for effective microorganisms. If you're at least somewhat interested in natural farming, you're going to get some of that along with it. So I'll show you how to go about doing it, what we do, and how simple it is. The one major problem that we're experiencing right now is cheap buckets. Cheap buckets. These are the ones you pick up for like $5 at the ranch store or the home improvement store, and they may last for a season and then they bust. And so I don't like the idea of having a bucket that I have to pay $5 for that I can only use for 1 year. So we're going to look into getting some more buckets that may last a bit longer than the ones we've been getting. All right, so that's all coming up, and you'll get to have a really good look at what our corn looks like on the end of May, on the 31st of May. Is whenever we started the fertilizer video. So I start out by showing you the corn. Little tongue-in-cheek talk about knee-high by the 4th of July because we're up to our eyeballs in the end of May. And how do we get there? How do we get there without a mutant corn? How do we get there without buying artificial fertilizer from somewhere? We don't use artificial fertilizer from somewhere. It is all naturally produced by the ducks right here. So, I mean, I guess I could show you the bag of 10-20-10 that we've got that came with the house that we still haven't used. It's still sitting there on the back porch. I opened it up, pulled a little bit out to put into the plastic bag years ago, do a little skit where I was talking about the fertilizer dealer. It's kind of like the drug dealer slinging the stuff out of little baggies. Here you go. You know you need it. You know you need it. You'll be back. You'll be back for more. Because once you start using this stuff, you're pretty much destined to continue chemical farming until you can do something to break yourself out of that cycle. And that's expensive if you're trying to run a commercial operation. This is the reason why everybody uses chemical farming, right? Anyway, so up to the eyeballs by the end of May. And it's over my head now. So first week of June is already over my head. We're getting ready to bring the ducks out to let them go into the corn patch to keep the grasshoppers out. The grasshoppers are numerous and abundant. Anyway, guys, I've been going on too long. I'm going to bed. Good night, good people. Have a wonderful evening. As always, I hope you found the video informative or entertaining. And if you did, you know what to do. I will catch you next time. But until then, get out there